Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is launch. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear launch used is to mean to start an activity or set a project into motion. Uh, Previously, when I worked in more of a corporate role, we would have new initiatives and would sort of be announced. They will be launching this particular week, or they will be starting this particular week. A second way you might hear launch used is to mean to set a boat or a ship in motion. Uh, Sort of connected to this, our third one is to send a spacecraft, a missile, a satellite on its course. So, with definitions 2 and 3, again, I would think of the word start here and that this action of starting a boat, a ship, a spacecraft, a missile, etc., on its course. Another way you might hear the verb launch used is to mean to throw something forcefully. A fifth way we can use the verb launch is to mean to make sudden and rather energetic movements. You should know that launch is a regular verb. To make the progressive form, all you're going to do is add ing to form launching. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by adding ed. Our base verb, launch, ends in an unvoiced ch sound. So our past tense ending is going to make a t sound. It should sound like this: launched, launched. Okay. Now, there are a few phrasal verbs that you should be aware of. The first is to launch against. This is generally used to note that someone or some group is beginning an action or a plan of attack against another person or thing or group of people. An example of this might be immune cells from the donor's bone marrow launched an attack against cells in the patient's bodies. I saw this sentence recently as I was reading about a new development in treating HIV. So, this was some medical study that was done, and that's how they uh, described what was happening. Um, so, certain cells launching an attack against other cells. Another phrasal verb you might hear is to launch into. This generally means that someone is beginning to do something. An example of this might be if you ask, she will launch into a full analysis of all the Olympic events. So sometimes people will use this to sort of suggest they're going to be talking a great deal, a lot, and that's what that sentence is implying. Another phrasal verb you might hear is to launch out. This kind of goes back to the first definition we looked at earlier of starting a new project, starting some new undertaking. An example of this could be her new business was launched out of her longtime hobby. So, kind of, it started from a hobby. Now, let's continue using our verb of the day launch in a couple different verb tenses. Today, we're going to practice the simple past tense and the simple future using be going to. Let's start with the simple past tense. We use this action to describe, or we use this verb tense to describe an action that was completed at some known point in the past. And the nice thing about this verb tense is that our structure is going to be the same no matter what our subject is. So we're going to use that ed form of the verb here because this is a regular verb. An example here might be New Hampshire students launched a boat in 2020 and it was just found in Norway last week. Okay. This is a true sentence, a true statement. Again, something I saw in uh, mentioned in the news. This is that idea of setting a boat, in this case, out to sea. We've got a time signal here, 2020. There's a definite point that we know. Um, Now let's move on to the negative. To do this, we're going to start with our subject, then have did, not, and then the base verb. So notice we're not using that ed form with our negative. Here's another example. The new streaming service didn't launch in 2021. Okay? This is talking about a business venture, a platform in this case, and here meaning it did not begin, it didn't start to operate. If we want to make a yes or no question in the simple past tense, we can start with did, then we'll have our subject, and then the base verb. So again, we're not using the ed form here in our yes or no question. An example could be, did NASA launch a satellite in 1958? So in all three of my examples, you can see those past tense time signals, so known points in the past. I want to note though, you won't always see those when you're reading. Sometimes it's implied as part of a longer text, or maybe it's implied as part of a conversation that you're having with someone else. Now let's move on to the simple future. And again, we're going to focus on using be, going to, and our base verb here. So because we're doing this particular form of the simple future, we do need to pay attention to our subject. Our form of be is going to change based on that subject. So if the subject is I, we'll use am. If the subject is he, she, or it, we'll use is. And if our subject is you, we, or they, we will use are. An example of a simple future sentence here. NASA is going to launch a rocket from another planet. Right? So here we're talking about a future plan. This is one reason we would use be going to. If I want to make a negative sentence in the simple future, I'm going to use the form of be that matches my subject, but then I'll insert not before going to and the base verb. An example of this might be, we aren't going to launch the new products until they are safe and ready. So here, someone might be, again, announcing sort of a plan for the future. Finally, we can make a yes or no question in the simple future using be going to. Again, we'll start with a form of be, whichever form matches our subject, then subject comes next, then going to and our base verb. Here's another example. Is Andrew Yang going to launch a new political party? Now, if you're outside the US, this sentence might not make much sense. Andrew Yang is someone who ran for president in 2020. First, I guess I should say he ran for the Democratic nomination for president. Has since run for I think mayor of New York City as well, and there's been some discussion about him beginning or starting a new political party. Now, let's take a moment to look at some words that are related to our verb launch. And the first word we're going to look at is just the noun form of this word. Okay, so our noun form has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation. The noun launch can mean an act or an instance of launching something. So again, you might think of spacecrafts, space shuttles. Many times this noun form is used with them. My example sentence is sort of what I had in mind when I wrote, the launch is set for 11 a.m. tomorrow, right? So that's the point at which it's going to take off. A second way you'll hear launch used is to mean an occasion at which a new product, a new publication, something of that nature is introduced to the public. An example of how you might hear it would be, are you going to the book launch? Right? So this idea that it's being released to the general public. Another related word you might hear is the noun launcher. It means a structure that holds a rocket or missile during that process of kind of leaving the ground and traveling into the sky. So, an example of this: the country's been sending more rocket launchers to the border. Our last related word is the noun launch pad or launching pad. You'll hear both forms, but they both essentially mean um, either the area on which a rocket stands for that process of being sent into the sky. So many times that's going to be some type of platform like structure. An example of this might be the launch pad was just assembled at the test site. So we're talking about that specific space from which something will be um, shot up into the air. But a second way you might hear launch pad or launching pad used is to describe something that sets a particular activity or project or something else into motion. An example of this might be: this position has been a launching pad for politicians seeking to be governor. So this sentence is describing a particular job, a role. Maybe it's the role of lieutenant governor, and this idea that that's going to set into motion this person eventually becoming the governor of a particular state. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.